hang on, hold your horses. I've not lost my mind. Before you report me to the police, I'm well aware that bow hunting in the UK is in fact illegal. And I'm not really hunting deer, we've simply used a bit of clever camera trickery and editing, courtesy of Connor. And this little roebuck is left to go on its way. Hunting with a bow and arrow was in fact prohibited in the UK in 1965, and in the most up-to-date Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981, its legal status remains unchanged. However, modern bow hunting continues to be employed effectively alongside and often as an alternative to firearms in many parts of the world that include the EU and US as part of existing wildlife management and conservation initiatives. The British Bow Hunters Association are one organisation that believe that should legislation be reintroduced to allow bow hunting, that it can make a valuable contribution to existing UK wildlife management, conservation programmes and regional economies, as it does in Europe and elsewhere in the world. I got to meet up with the guys from the British Bow Hunters Association at this year's stalking show. So today I'm here with Andy, who is chairman of the British Bow Hunters Association.
Mm-hmm.
Andy, thanks for joining us today.
Welcome.
I think what a lot of our viewers are going to be interested in, first of all, is the legality behind it. Now, you and I know that bow hunting in the UK is not legal at the moment. Perhaps you can give us an insight into why that is.
Well, the why basically comes about from the formation of the first Deer Act back in 1963, which is the precursor to the now Wildlife and Countryside Act. And Parliament were actually looking quite heavily into having that included in the legislation, bow hunting. But there was nobody in the UK at the time, no organisation, to stand up and say, well, you know, we can provide you with the right information regarding bow weight, arrow weight, broadhead type.
Yeah. So it was an opportunity lost, really.
It was an opportunity lost. They approached the then field archery associations, and they didn't want to know anything about bow hunting. The Royal Toxophilites in London, they asked them. They weren't interested, so they still went ahead, and they looked into the efficacy of it.
Yeah.
And they spent a lot of time on the Duke of York's estate, where they shot quite a few deer and determined that it's effective. This is back in 1963 now, before the advent of compound bows, that it was effective out to 50 yards and beyond.
And we're going to talk more about that in a minute, because I think that's a really good point. But do you ever think that in the UK there is going to be a state or a time when effectively bow hunting could be introduced?
Well, we believe that there is, and that time is not too far away, or it would be an ideal time now. The amount of Britain that we've got, just the amount of deer we've got in the UK at the minute.
Highest population
since the Romans, and you have a good opportunity. Peri-urban deer management, for instance, or wild boar maybe in Scotland.
Well, you've got the government and DEFRA on your side, really, haven't you? In so much as deer need to be controlled, and that's widely accepted now. So I think you're right. There's a kind of almost a opportune moment to talk more, I think, with the government about the virtues of.
I don't think it will happen overnight, and I don't think it will become blanketly accepted. But I think there's an opportunity for some licensed exercises in peri-urban control where its efficacy can be proven in effect.
Yeah. And tell me, we understand that we can't hunt deer with a bow in the UK. Where can we go? If someone's going to learn to use a bow in the UK and learn what they need to know in order to be a proper trained hunter, where can they go?
Well, for starters, you'd be better off going to somebody like the NFAS, Field Archery Associations. They will teach you the basics of how to use a bow. They'll get you fitted correctly. They have some really good 3D courses, life-size targets that you can practice on with field points. And then if you wanted to take that further and then start to hunt, you could come and see us. You know, we provide the education certification for the International Bowhunter Education
And there is a
Foundation.
particular certificate that you need, I think, isn't there, in order to be able to hunt?
In the States, I think every state will accept the IBEP, which is Bowhunter Specific Education.
Well, thanks very much for that. I think what we're going to do is we're going to have a quick chat with Gary, because we're also interested to know some of the equipment that you use, and the arrows and so forth, because I know people are going to be really fascinated by that. That, and as you say, just how efficient and how lethal bows can be in the right hands.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, they kill the same as a rifle bullet. You've got to start looking at the mode of death and how they determine death from a medical perspective, and it's cessation of brain activity, and that's purely lack of oxygen. So if you can lower the blood pressure by a razor-sharp broadhead through the vitals, it's just as effective as a bullet.
And tell me more about that, because you're going to need to be in pretty close proximity to that animal, aren't they?
You are.
Because, I mean, I'm speaking as an amateur here. I've used a bow before, but I also understand that there is going to be a certain twang when that string goes off that the animal hears, and if it hears it, it can be off. They react very quickly.
They do react
So what sort of ranges are we talking about?
Well, if we're talking accuracy, a modern compound bow, a reasonable archer will be able to group 4 arrows in a 4-inch circle at 60 yards. But we wouldn't take a shot at an animal at 60 yards, purely because of the amount of time the arrow is in the air.
Yeah.
You know, it's not rifle bullet speed.
Yeah.
And an animal can take half a step and it goes from a thorax hit to a wound.
Yeah.
So we like to keep ranges 30 yards and under with compound bows. There are some species you would even shorten that even again. White-tailed deer, for instance, that hunted on the east coast, their reaction times are immensely fast. You know, they're in an arms race with mountain lions, and the twang
They're
of
like
the
a
bow.
coiled spring. Almost,
They're like a coiled
ready to
spring,
go.
and at the sound of the bow going off, they don't just run; they drop to gather power. That's what they call it, string jumping.
So what you're saying, I think, is that, you know, an arrow can deliver a lethal wound at whatever range you can shoot it at. But what the problem you've got is the animal's reaction to to hearing it, and also the concern that the animal may step off while the arrow's in flight.
Which is why we don't take long shots, and we say, you know, 30 yards and under for a compound bow, and if you're hunting with traditional gear, it's 15 to 20 yards.
Okay. And coming back onto the lethality of that arrow, I mean, as a deer stalker, I know that, you know, the cause of death from a heart and lung shot is going to be asphyxiation. The blood drains away from the brain, doesn't it? Starving of oxygen, and that's why deer expire. It's as simple as that. But I know how quickly that happens with a rifle bullet. Do you think an arrow with the right head and the right tip is going to create that sort of
the right head,
effect?
The right shot placement? It can be seconds, up to 6 seconds, 7 seconds. Obviously, an animal can run 50 yards in that time. But if you put the shot in the right place, there's no reason it can't be as quick as, you know, that death occurs as fast as any bullet through the lungs.
Andy, that's been really useful. Thank you so much. I think we're going to talk to Gary a little bit more about some of the equipment that you're using. Okay, so now we're going to talk more about some of the equipment that bow hunters use. And I've got Gary here in front of me. Hello, Gary.
Hiya.
Great to see you. Good. Now, the last time I met Gary was during a Capriolas Club event when, I mean, I learned an enormous amount about bow hunting at that stage. And you brought along a whole host of bows and arrows and heads and tips. Tell us a little bit more. Let's start with the bows. What sort of bow do you use?
Okay, we're going to use compound bow.
Okay.
So compound bow, recurve bow. Compound bow is going to be more accurate, more powerful, harder to set up than a recurve bow, which is just a string, a much simpler way of getting into archery.
Okay.
But the compound bow, people are very surprised at how quick they can get accurate with a compound bow.
Okay.
When you start hunting with one, it's then taking it to the next level to get the tuning of the bow correct, so it shoots the broadheads and hunting heads more accurate.
So you're suggesting really that beginners to the sport, we call
Yeah.
it a sport, don't
Yeah.
we, to this pastime are going to use compound bows. That's the best starting point, is it?
That's how I started, with a compound bow, a cheap compound bow, in a package deal. So you get your arrows, your sights, your bow, it's all in there. Go to an archery shop to purchase it.
Yeah.
They set it all up for you, do the little adjustments to it. You just go home and shoot it.
Now, I think that's a really good advice there, isn't it? Because, you know, we're talking about an expansive subject, aren't we?
Yes.
I mean, you talk to a deer stalker about ammunition and calibers and rifles,
Yeah.
you could go on for an hour.
You could.
So what you're suggesting is really go to an archery shop, speak to a professional,
Yes.
and tease out what those things that you need. But
That's what you
But
need.
in brief, Gary, what would be the main things you were looking at on a bow?
The main thing is going to be looking at the bow, but somebody needs to tell you this really, is to set the bow up to your draw length.
Okay.
Or you're going to be overstretching. Yeah, if it's too big for you, your hand's going to be over here, it's
Okay.
not going to be there. You've got to be able to pull the poundage back. It's like having a big caliber rifle,
Yeah.
or having the big. Same with the bows. You could get right up to 80, 90 pound draw weight bows. Best way to find out if that bow weight suits you, sit down on a chair, then draw the bow back. So you're drawing it back, straight back, you're not leaning back to try and help you pull the bow back.
Okay.
Sit down. So with a package deal, the bow would be probably highly adjustable.
Yeah.
So you can run it from £40 draw right up to 70 and anywhere in between.
So it's going to vary enormously on the person's physicality, isn't it, as to what they can draw.
It's like having a gun stock, all adjusted for you. Your bow has got to be adjusted to fit you. That's it.
But presumably, though, I mean, the first time you pick up a bow, you're going to draw it, and you know you're not going to be used to that movement. You're going to be quite weak in that range of movement.
You are.
But I would imagine quite quickly you start developing the musculature that you need to be able to draw that
That's
bow.
it. If you apply the correct technique, you will soon build strength up. As soon as you start building the strength up and you feel comfortable with it, a few tweaks of the bow, turn the poundage up a little bit,
Okay.
shoot some more arrows.
So you can get a bow and you can adjust the poundage on it. You
Adjust
don't
the
need to
poundage.
get the bow with the set poundage.
No.
You can adjust that
Get
as you get stronger.
Get a highly adjustable one that will actually adjust probably from 40 right up to 65 or 70 pounds.
Interesting.
Yeah, so you can set it,
Yeah.
just suits you.
What poundage do you use?
At the minute, £70.
£70. You
70.
find that comfortable yourself?
I find that comfortable, but with how the bows are basically getting better and better each year,
Yeah.
people are actually now, some people are going up to £80 bows because they're smooth to draw back and they're finding them just as easy to draw back than a £70 bow. So they're thinking, right, £10 and increase the speed.
What else might we get on a bow? What else might we be thinking about? Now the sight is going to be one issue. isn't it?
Sight, you've got a sight is again, it's what you want to see. You can have just a single pin sight that is movable, so you can just range find the animal, then adjust the sight by a quick lever up and down to the yardage, aim dead at it. Or you can get some people think that's a bit too slow. If you spot and store, again, you've got to judge it, range find it, adjust the sight, things are moved.
Okay. But basically the message is when you're going for a compound bow, go and see the experts, go into an archery shop
go to
and
an
really
archery
get some
shop.
advice.
Get that first package, get them to fit it to you, so you can go away, just enjoy shooting arrows.
Okay.
That's
Now you also mentioned recurve bows. Is
Yeah.
this something that beginners need to think about, or is this something that comes down further down the line?
I have tried shooting recurve bows, and I can actually get quite good at it some days. The next day the technique's completely gone,
Okay.
and it's. But you find people who've shot recurve bows from a very early age, and have started using probably only at £30, and now they're shooting £55.
Wow.
And they're very accurate, and basically it's hand-eye coordination.
Yeah.
Hand-eye coordination is everything.
Yeah.
And you've got to trust
So this
in
is something that's a little bit more intuitive rather than aiming. You're not aiming as such. It's something that's a little bit more.
Yeah, it's a lovely way I was going to go and do a hunt with a recurve bow. So I thought, stalking animals, close up, always going to be within 20 yards, much quicker, hand and eye coordination, look at the animal, look where you want to hit the animal, start throwing a ball, but you've got to do a lot of practicing.
Now, Gary, tell me, we talked about bows.
Yeah.
Now, what about the tips? Because some things are going to be specific to targets and some things are going to be specific to hunting, aren't they?
Okay, this is again, you could get into a big colour debate on this, and it causes so many arguments. The main tips you use is a field tip. A field tip is just going to be a practice.
Show me, we've got a few up here, haven't we?
Yeah, we've got some up here. Right, here's one here. So that is just a field tip.
Okay.
That's what you're going to use for practicing with.
May I have a look?
Yeah, shooting at targets.
Okay. Okay, so that's your field tip.
That's your field tip. This is the mechanical tip.
Okay.
Right, now this is the ones that open on impact.
Right, okay. Effectively like expanding ammunition.
Yeah, expanding ammunition. But if you're going to hunt with these, you need to practice with these at a target.
Gotcha.
Just to make sure everything's flying the same.
Because you're talking about the tips, the weight of the tip and so forth,
Yeah.
to check that you're still on target with that.
You've got to, yeah.
And do you have another example?
You've got here, this is a larger game tip.
Yeah.
So I'd quite happily take like Eland
really?
downwards with this, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're going somewhere where you don't really know what you're going to come across in animal size, weight,
Yeah.
that's a 200 grain head.
Okay.
All in all, that arrow is 550 grains. Out that bow, it's coming out at 243 feet per second.
Is it now?
Yeah. That's a single bevel, so it's only got a one beveled edge on that side, one beveled edge on that side.
Gotcha.
That's designed, if it hits heavy bone, that's going to split the bone and carry on going.
And in terms of penetration, would you expect an arrow like that to exit?
Yes.
Even
Definitely.
on an animal like as large as an eland?
Eland, I would expect that to
Okay.
straight
But
through it.
on thin-skinned deer,
Yeah.
one imagines that the arrow is going to pass through.
It's just going to pass through. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Causing an enormous bleed.
Nowadays, you've even got guys building more or less the same arrow, but heavier, probably 900,000 grains, and they're passing through Cape Buffalo.
Amazing.
You haven't got to worry about the impact. So with a bullet, it's the thump it's giving it. That is just like being ran through with a very. It's a sharp.
We're talking about creating an enormous bleed into the wind
enormous
channel,
bleed.
aren't we?
Yeah.
And I've seen some of the reactions to deer and from arrows, and they really don't go far, do they?
No.
So we're dealing with equipment that is extremely humane, really, aren't we?
Very humane. Yes. It's. What people have got to understand is that, like, compare it to rifle hunting. Every time you squeeze that trigger, if you're going for a heart and lung shot, could you honestly say that animal is not going to move?
Yeah.
You don't know. I've shot wildebeest with a head like this. Wildebeest, they say classic, quite a hard animal to bring down. It's gone 5 yards.
Yeah,
It's
amazing. Yeah.
So,
And on that note,
it's
Gary,
the placement.
you shot all around the world, and some of our viewers may want to know, where do you consider to be some of the best places in the world to be able to go and hunt with a bow?
If you don't want to travel far, Europe, so Spain, France, that sort of thing. If you want to go a bit further afield, management hunts in Africa.
And again, people, the same with deer stalking, we're talking about harvesting wild animals from their natural environment and utilising them for as a sustainable food source. I mean, nothing goes to waste.
No.
Everything that we shoot is being eaten.
We eat a lot of the animals in camp. The trackers have them. The families are in camp. They have the animals. Anything surplus goes straight to our game dealer.
So, guys, essentially what we're talking about equipment which I think is very humane. It's going to put that animal down quickly, and we're going to be consuming the animals as well in the same way as we would with deer stalking. From everything that I've seen, I really don't see a good argument for not introducing bow hunting to the UK.
There's so many European countries now bringing it back. Even if they've banned it in the past, they bring it back as a management tool. Urban boar, urban deer, it's something they use and have used for many years in Europe.
Yeah.
Why can't we use it here?
Well, watch this space, ladies and gents. And in the meantime, if you want to find out a little bit more about bow hunting, then a great place to do so is via the British Bow Hunters Association. Thank you, Gary. Thank you. Great to see you.
Cheers.
Personally, as was demonstrated by the clip of the roebuck, which we showed earlier on in the film, time and again I've been able to get close enough to be able to hunt deer with a bow. Only wish I could do it legitimately, but for now I'll have to stick to the rifle. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in deer stalking and would like to become a trained hunter, a great place to start is by taking the Proficient Deer Stalker Level 1 PDS1 via the Shooting and Hunting Academy.